What's up, guys? Kyle here again. This is FAQ'n Friday number 8, I believe, and we're doing it janky style because I didn't have any time to film it this week, so I apologize. I'm literally at the gas station on my way home from work. It's been a hell of a week. So anyways, I didn't want to miss an episode, so I figured I'd just do a real quick one here while I had a couple minutes on my way home. We'll answer a couple of you guys' questions, and hopefully that helps, and you know, we'll get back to the regular style next week. Anyways, thanks for watching. First question, my dude Andrew Ward, again, thanks for the question, man. By the way, Andrew is in a band called Watcher from Pittsburgh. If you're into the hardcore stuff, give Watcher a like and a follow on Facebook and check him out. His question is, hey bro, another sick video. Thanks, man. Engls, we tried a Fireball 100 at Cerebral Audio Recording, our EP, and it was great, but it was kind of like a dirtier dual rec. Just wondering your experiences with Engl. P.S. We went with a dual rec and an EL34 5153. I've owned a few Engl amps. I have not liked any of the Engls that I have owned. I've had a Powerball 1, which I hated. Ridiculously compressed and oversaturated. It was so compressed and saturated that the amp just felt like it had no life to it. Super buzzy. I ended up putting a 12 AT7 tube in the preamp to kind of calm the gain on it and open it up a little bit, and that actually helped. I liked it a lot more after that, but still, it just wasn't an amp that I was interested in hanging on to long term. I also owned a RetroTube 100, which I liked a lot more. I actually really liked the tone of that amp, but the low end was just super saggy. It just wasn't a tight low end, wasn't a low end that I liked the reaction of, but otherwise it was, even though it's the RetroTube 100, it was pretty modern sounding, and had a good overall voicing to it. Like I said, I just wasn't really a fan of the low end, and in the end, you guys know how reaction and feel and stuff like that is really important to me, so I just couldn't justify keeping the amp, so I sold that one. I also had an Iron Ball 20, which I had for or I plugged into for all of 25 minutes before just realizing it just wasn't the amp for me. I know a lot of guys love them, and I'm not shitting on Engls by any means. They're just not for me, the ones that I've played anyways. So those are my experiences with Engls I've owned. But Jason, my other guitarist, had a Fireball 100, which I actually thought sounded awesome. It kind of reminded me of a 5150 type tone, but more refined and tighter, from what I recall. We used it on the Subdue EP in tandem with a VHT CLX and a 5152, I think, were all the amps that we used, and the tone on that thing came out, or on that EP, sounds amazing, and I always like the tone of that amp, so I would like to land a Fireball 100 one day, and I've been told that the Savage 120 is pretty awesome too. I would like to try an Invader as well. I mean, I'm not against Engl amps whatsoever. I just haven't tried one I've loved yet, other than the Fireball 100, which I didn't really get to play. I've just heard secondhand. So that's my experience with Engl. Question number 2, Luke Wilson. Thanks, Luke. Appreciate it, man. You're here every week as well. 5150 versus 6505 versus 5152 versus 6505 plus. Which is the best bang for buck tone? Right now, either of the 6505s are going to be your better bet because the 5150 prices have skyrocketed. I haven't even really looked at them lately, to be completely honest, because after Eddie passed away, they got ridiculous, and I just stopped looking for them because I knew it was going to be really hard to find any of them at reasonable prices. The 6505s, however, I still see popping up on Guitar Center's website all the time for $500 to $600, which is what they should be worth in good condition. They are the same amps, so I don't even want to get into that argument, but yeah, the 6505 is the same as the 5150. The 6505 Plus is the same as the 5152. If you don't believe me, just, you know, watch the Tone Talk episode with James Brown, the designer of the amps, who says, yeah, they didn't change anything. The only thing that changed in the time that he was at Peavey was the output transformers. They had to change manufacturers because their old one went out of business, but the new ones were built to the exact same spec, and he thought they sounded exactly the same. So anyways, yeah, best bang for your buck is definitely going to be a used 6505 or 6505 Plus. I personally like the Plus better than the original just because it's a little bit more to my, you know, liking, as far as it's got a tighter low end than the original, and it's got more upper mids than the original. It's not as low mid based as the 6505 or the 5150, and it's got a little bit more clarity, and the gain is a little bit more under control. So it's a little bit refined. It's not as wild as the original 5150 or 6505, but the characteristics that it has, I think, favor my ear more. But I love all of them anyways. So I mean, yeah, you could probably find a used 6505 if you're diligent around 400 bucks, because that's what I bought my last one for, and that was like 6 months ago. So yeah, keep your eye out. Those are the best value for sure. Sorry guys, I'm scanning through the questions here as we're looking. Alan Swanson says, I'm looking for another boost pedal for my 5153 6L6. Currently using a cheap Tube Screamer clone, the Demon. Just another flavor. Cheap is good. Suggestions, please. If you're buying new and you're looking for a cheap boost, the Boss SD1 is the way to go. I mean, it's a classic for a reason. It's a great sounding boost, and it would complement your Tube Screamer style one, because the SD1 kind of has its own voice going on, and it has a different style of clipping than the Tube Screamer style boosts do. If you're willing to buy used, I mean, I'll always recommend the old faithful MXR M77 Badass Modified Overdrive, because I think that thing sounds great, has great tone or EQ control options on it, and usually you can find them used for 50 or 60 bucks, and I think that they're worth every bit of that. That's my opinion though. If you want to go Chinese, I mean, you can pick up, you know, you can fill a bargain bin with Chinese Tube Screamer variants and other boost variants for the same price as a new Tube Screamer. So look at Joyo, look at Moore has some good ones, and there's some other goofy brands out there that have a bunch of them for like 25 bucks brand new that actually sound good, but I just don't love the whole idea of Chinese copies replacing, you know, the name brand stuff, unless they're doing something different to it, I guess. But that's just my take. So those would be my recommendations. Boss SD1, MXR Badass Modified OD. They both sound very different from a regular Tube Screamer, and they're both in the lower price range as far as pedals are concerned. Steve Alt, my buddy, says, advice on pickups for drop tunings like B to get crowbar tones. I know Kirk has been a long time user of the EMG 81 pickup, so that would be my first recommendation. If you don't want to go active, the DiMarzio deactivator does a pretty convincing active tone, but is still a little bit more open and a little bit, I think they're a little bit clearer, and they have a little bit more on the low end. But that's if you don't want to change out for active pickups. If you already have a guitar with actives or an EMG 81, you're set, because he's used that for a long time. A lot of his tone is in his, he uses a Boss Metal Zone as a boost a lot of the time. He sets it like you would set a Tube Screamer, with the drive up, volume down, and then he uses the EQ to taste. I messed with that once on a dual rectifier, and I was actually able to get a pretty convincing crowbar tone out of a Gibson Flying V, a dual rec with a Boss Metal Zone out in front. So yeah, EMG 81 pickups, but that Metal Zone is kind of the key. Paulo Marquez says, hi Kyle, keep up the good work, man. Have you ever played Engl amps? And what are your thoughts on them comparing to high gain Peaveys and EVH amps? So kind of touching back on the Engl thing, how they compare to Peaveys is, I think that they're more similar to Peaveys than most other amps in the way that they are really compressed and can get kind of buzzy in the gain department, because Peaveys kind of have a reputation for that. I think most of the Peavey buzziness goes away once you get some volume on it, but I mean, it's still there, especially when you compare it to different amps, like modded Marshalls and stuff like that. So I would say that's how they're similar. How they're different, it's kind of tough for me to say, because I haven't played a ton of Engls or spent a lot of time with them. I've just noticed that every one of them that I've had or played has a lot of compression, and that's saying something, considering that the Peavey stuff has a lot of compression too. I would put the Engls that I've played over the Peaveys in the amount of compression they contain. They're very, very compressed amps. Not a lot of touch dynamics or feel to them. They're very fluid feeling because of the compression. They're very easy to play, but again, you kind of lose out on the dynamics, and they tend to be a little bit on the buzzy side because of the level of saturation. That's just my opinion. Those are the amps I've played again, so, you know, like I said, take that as you will. Last question from Rocknaz. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I'm going with it. Have you ever played amps similar to Splon? Any interesting ones which are not on the channel? I like aggressive percussive. Besides 5150, so far the Marshall DSL 100H and Diamond Phantom gave me that feel. Not necessarily the tone, but still looking for more. So yeah, I always kind of put VHT Fryette stuff in the same category as Splons, just because of their feel and their response. Both manufacturers tend to put a lot of very big, tight, low end into their amps. Both guys seem to design them to be very dry and very touch responsive, and both VHTs and Splon seem to be very articulate and have a very particular voicing. VHTs are more on the modern side, whereas Splons are very much modded 800, but they have their own signature mid voicing, which is kind of hard to explain, but a lot of guys that don't like Splons don't like them because of that signature mid voicing. I personally like it because I think it sits in a mix really well, but that's just me. The VHT stuff, you know, both the Splon and the VHT stuff is very percussive on the low end, especially if you have a really strong right hand and you're punching those strings. You're going to get a ton of really quick, really punchy bass response out of either of those. As far as amps that are similar to those, I don't like them personally, but the Randall Thrasher and the Randall Satan that I had both had a similar low end and a dryness to them like that. But they were very modern, and I just felt like they sounded kind of stale in comparison. Not bad amps by any means. They just, for me, I didn't quite like the way that they sounded. But they were definitely real similar to the Splon thing as far as the dryness, the tightness, and the how open they are. I would say the DSL can kind of do that as far as like a percussive low end if you have the right boost, the right cab, the right pickups. I just put out a video yesterday on the DSL 50 and how much I like it and everything, which I was so tired I couldn't even stay up for the premiere of that, so I apologize, guys. There was a bunch of stuff in the live chat I missed. But anyways, yeah, a lot of the percussiveness comes from you and your right hand, and also your boost and what cab you use. So it's not fully dependent on the amp, but the amp will make a difference. You mentioned 5150 and the EVH stuff. Yeah, that stuff can definitely get percussive if you have the right technique. The DSL 100 can get percussive if you have the right technique, and also on the 100H, that has the resonance pot instead of the deep switch, which is kind of the mod that I did to my DSL 50. So that helps you fine tune that low end more. That amp can get percussive. A 900 SLX can get percussive. An 800, it's all in how you play it and how you boost it and how you EQ it. So it's kind of tough, man. Does anything punch quite like a Splon? In my opinion, no. If you've never played one and you like really quick, huge but punchy low end, try a Splon, please. I mean, there's nothing like the low end of a Splon, truly. The VHT stuff is the closest thing, but it's not the same. So yeah, that would be the VHT Fryette stuff is the closest for sure. I'm kind of rambling on about this subject at the moment, so I apologize. I hope I answered your question well. But anyways, yeah, as you know, I love Splons, so I'm just gonna say, just get a Splon. If you want something to sound like a Splon, get a Splon. Very hard to be disappointed with those. Anyways, yeah, that's gonna do it for me. That's all the questions we got for this week, guys. Please drop your questions down below in the comments and let me know what you thought about my answers this week, if they were helpful. Sunday, Bushido Code has a video shoot for the first single off our full length, so I'm super pumped on that. I'm actually going to do a vlog, my first vlog ever on that experience, because we're working with a pretty professional dude. The band doesn't really get together as a full band very often because we live in, you know, 3 different very separated areas. So kind of give you guys some insight into the band that I'm always talking about, but, you know, never really showing you guys on the channel. So yeah, I'll probably have that up sometime this week. But anyways, thanks for watching this. Leave your comments below. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Kyle here. See you next time.